Hi,
Hi,
Nidhi.
Abhishek.
Hi, good evening. It's night for you actually.
Yes,
It's night.
it is.
Absolutely. Cool. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Abhishek? And thank you for pushing me out of my comfort zone and planning this one.
No, that's absolutely okay. I know we planned this since quite some time, and
Yes,
finally
yes,
it's happening. So
totally.
cool. Yeah. So I think people are joining. We'll start in 1 minute or so, I guess.
Yes. Hi, Vanshika. Hi,
So
Fatima.
there's
Oh, okay. Some familiar names here.
yeah
Yes.
there's this Van Scribbles is
Yes, that's Vanshika.
ah okay. That's a
And
nice
that's
idea for a
Aryan.
name actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Great.
how's
How
the
is
weather, Delhi
it's
weather?
a little cold there actually. It's less than 30
Oh
degree
my
today. It's 29.
God.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
not
I'm envious now.
uh,
I'm quite, for
but
June, it's quite a good
it,
weather.
it's good weather. Delhi summers this year are absolutely different.
Okay.
I don't know how the future months will be like,
Right.
but this is not the June as
Uh,
I saw it since yeah.
please keep it that way for next 20 days. I'm coming soon. I would
Yes.
love to see this kind of a weather in this time. So,
Yeah, hopefully it will be. Anyway, July is starting, and July typically is less hotter than you
right,
know June, and this year even May, June are not that hot.
right.
So hopefully, yeah, the
Yeah,
weather should be good.
definitely.
Awesome. I think yeah, many people have joined, and
Yes,
it's 2 minutes past 5. So I think we can start.
definitely.
And yeah, let me start by introducing you. As I remember, we discussed that I will be doing the introduction. And anyway, you don't really need to introduce yourself. You are the writer of two
I think that
best-selling
is one
books.
thing I'm very bad at, introducing myself. So probably I
Yeah,
would leave that with you.
sure. All right. So I think many people know, but for the uninitiated, Nidhi is the best-selling author of That Night, and it is right here in front of me. And her debut novel, That Night, became a national bestseller in a record time of 8 months. And for her second book, which is I Hear You, Penguin Random House India started a trend of advanced readers' copies, which gave Indian readers a sneak peek into the book before it went to press. That reminds me, I didn't get any copies, so I think we can perhaps discuss this after this session. And
Okay.
yeah, Nidhi received a grant from the prestigious National Art Council of Singapore for her both books, That Night and I Hear You. She holds an engineering degree from Kurukshetra University. She's a full-time writer and lives in Singapore. She is often found hiding her current search history from her boys. If not busy researching a way to kill, draw, and dispose of bodies, Nidhi can be found reading thrillers or screaming at her boys. You also mentioned one very interesting thing is your husband is disillusioned that your writing career is a retirement plan.
Yes,
So
most
this
definitely.
yeah, this is something we'll discuss later. But yeah, uh, given your engineering degree and then you moved to headhunting, so I remember many memes on engineers and I remember one of my engineering friends telling me that engineers do everything except engineering.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
yeah.
See,
So
we are
how did
versatile creatures.
absolutely? So how did that engineering degree led you to becoming a headhunter, then a writer, or maybe how did
No,
writing happen to Nidhi?
so it is other way around. Writing happened first
Okay.
because I am a closet writer since the age of 9. So
Oh,
I've been
great.
writing from back then when I was in grade 3 or 4. However, writing took a backtrack. I wanted to be financially independent, wanted to do engineering. Long story short, my parents, my mama ji, all of them saw some kind of a talent and wanted me to do English literature, which wasn't my idea of graduating at that point of time, because there were
Okay.
only two streams which would earn money. One was engineering, another one was being a doctor. So I
Okay.
decided to go down that lane. And kind of after kids, writing was really minimum, and
Right.
that was limited to writing a poem for my husband for anniversaries and birthdays. Now it was enough for him. He had kind of taken the torture for 15 years. So he decided that others should also kind of face the torture he was facing. So he told me that you should kind of publish something or write a blog or something, which I wasn't very keen. I was like, I don't write that well. I don't want to write. It is not what I'm looking for. And I
Right.
planned to go back to work soon because my younger one was 3 years old by then and was going to full-time school. I was creating my CV. I still remember that moment. And he came and he sat me down and he told me that, yes, you're good at your work, what you're doing, but what you write actually strikes chord with many people. And
Yeah.
I really love what you write. And if I had that talent, I would have quit. So through you, I can live my dream. So just
Okay.
at least try once. So that is when I started writing the story of Rudra and Mahika in between, taking the boys to classes, going for meetings, and so forth. The story shaped up well. With that came the dream of getting it published. And here I am, taken a different path altogether.
So you talked about the story of Rudra, but I think that night is your first published work.
Yes, but
So
it isn't my first written work. My
okay.
first book is I Hear You. I wrote first the story of Rudra and Mahika, and
Okay.
it was written 6 years ago, and
Okay.
it came to publishing now.
So you mentioned you started writing at the age of 9, and I'm sure any good writer is always a reader first. So
Yeah.
how did the reading habits, at what age did you start reading, and what did you read in your early years?
So for me, reading started as a kind of necessity because my mom and dad were working, and we were typical keychain kids where they would lock us and go. Now, normal school days are okay. You come back at 3:34, things are
Yeah.
manageable. But there were days when you have long holidays, like June holidays. That is when my mom introduced me to Gaban Godan, Munshi Premchand's
Yeah.
books. She is a Hindi literature graduate, and she
Okay.
works as a Hindi officer in a technical space in National Dairy Research Institute. So she had the access to this beautiful library with all kind of beautiful Hindi literature, and I started reading that first. So Gaban Godan, I think Gora by Mahadevi Verma was my first story that I read, and I was totally moved. And from there, I moved on to Agatha Christie, and after that, it has been Michael Crichton, and sci-fi is my favorite genre.
Mhm.
Thriller is my favorite genre. So it's a mix of all that has happened. But again, if you ask me, the first story was Gora that moved the entire, shift of paradigm happened at that point of time.
Absolutely. And you read different genres, but what did you like most, and how did, when it came to writing, you zeroed in on writing thrillers?
So interestingly, Abhishek, I kind of got introduced to thriller from Agatha Christie's, and then there were none. I think there is another name to it. At that point of time, it was called that. So I read that book in one of the libraries, and I got hooked onto it. When I came to Singapore 20 years ago, 23 years ago, at that point of time, I was not exposed to that kind of literature or that kind of books in India. But here in Singapore have national libraries very close to us. You can borrow multiple books and huge collection of books. That's when I got exposed to the real John Grisham, Dan Brown kind of stories and got hooked to thrillers. And then I will be very honest and I'm shameful about it. I don't experiment with other genres unless somebody really recommend a book. For example, Elephant All in or Elephant is Perfectly Fine is one of the books that someone highly recommended. A Man Called Ove. Those kind of books I pick on recommendation, but usually I would my safety zone is just pick up a thriller and start reading. So thriller is the genre that actually is the only genre I would just read without thinking.
No, that's definitely a good idea. In fact, I remember the famous Hindi crime fiction writer Surendra Mohan Pathak ji mentioned in an interview that I only read thrillers, and that overflow made me the writer. I read lot many thrillers and no wonder he.
So writing part, I don't think I was planning to write a thriller. I was craving to read a pregnancy book a pregnancy thriller at that point of time when I was pregnant with my younger one. And thrillers are not usually safe to read because they're very dark, gory,
Yeah.
and a lot of bloodshed and all that. So I was not reading those kind of things because we have that whatever you read impacts the kid as well. So there was a story going on in my mind that there should be a story about a pregnant mother that, somebody pregnant can read. It stayed there. And then when I started writing, I was writing a story about Rudra and Mahika.
Yeah.
I had not planned thriller, but the thriller lover in me was only thing I wanted was it should be a page turner. So the only way to make a story a page turner was to add thrill to it. I couldn't pass through one page without adding a hook to it, because then I was like, I am bored myself. How would I justify or how would I pull a reader into it?
Yeah.
So I kind of started making that promise to myself that every page will have some thrill for the reader to, get hooked to the story. Otherwise, I won't be able to write. So when I finished writing it, I realized that it is an interesting story that I did not know which genre it falls in, because there is love, there is motherhood, there is science, there is genetic modification, and there is a thrill in it. So it was very difficult to pitch the book to anyone or write a synopsis because I was not writing for a genre. I was just writing to bring out a story. So it happened to be an accidental thriller, the way that night happened to be accidental horror because I had not planned it to be a horror. So nothing was planned in terms of thriller. But again, it's always the case. Whatever is inside you just comes out, as Suren Mohan Pathak ji said.
Yeah. So my next question was related to what your books exactly, because I noticed, and as we discussed once, I also have read a lot of fiction and especially thrillers, and your novels, the ideas, the storyline is very different from the typical thriller or suspense or mystery books which I have read. So how you got into those ideas? If you ask bluntly, what's your secret sauce?
There is no secret source. So the simple thing is that how it happens with everyone. You pick up a newspaper, I'm sure you do the same thing, or you read headlines, and there is one particular topic that interests you, and you will read the entire article of that particular topics, whereas you will surpass everything else. For me, it was always genetic modification or ethical hacking, because probably I was inclined towards those. So I would keep on dumping those ideas, not at that point of time when I started writing, because Rudra and Mahika's story just evolved. Whereas other stories now that I have kind of, put in the pipeline are coming from a folder which I have named as idea. So I would dump ideas inside there, and I know I cannot chase an idea. I cannot beat around the bush and bring out something which I don't believe in. So I let the idea chase me. So if I sit over it, I let it marinate for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whether I can do it or not do it. There are hundreds of ideas that keep on going in my mind, but nothing comes into writing or planning because I don't plot the story. That's why it becomes so different from other stories, and kind of hybrid genre thing happens because I don't plot it. So I let it marinate, and then somewhere, somehow, with research and all, it kind of evolves into something else.
Right. Of course. Okay, I can see there are a lot of requests about not disclosing anything related to. I hear you, because some people are, halfway through it, or some we have not started. But as one thing, I would like to know, and it's already there on the back cover, so it's not really a spoiler. You talked about genetically altered photos, and so my question, you can say, is perhaps a little more in that sense philosophical. We talked about genetically modified kids, genetically modified fetuses. We are seeing a lot of things which are indicative of man moving away from nature. We talk about artificial intelligence and whatnot.
Totally.
How do you see those trends? Because whatever we call it, and no matter how much you're fascinated by it for AI and all, we are basically moving away from nature. And
True.
it's a case with practically everything. As you have done, you would have studied a lot about genetic modification and all for this book. How do you see this trend? Not as a writer, but say just as another person.
So as you said, I had read a lot about it. So there is a lot of ethical practices and laws against doing any of those. For example, I wrote this story in 2016 and 15. I think in 2019 there was a guy in China who had actually genetically altered a kid. I think twins. So where he is, he's in the jail. There was a lot of news about it, that he tried to kind of treat AIDS in the DNA, and in that process. So what I had imagined actually happened down the lane in 3 years, in 2019. And I was like, we are not far from when Ray Bradbury wrote that the phone would work on its own, the kettle would get on its own. There was a story long back ago I read about from Ray Bradbury, and at that time we did not know Alexa, Siri would exist, right?
Yeah.
So things are moving, but when it comes to genetic modification, there is a lot of practices and laws that have been placed in picture just to save the humanity. So
Yeah.
I am not really worried about it as such. I come from Dairy Research Institute background, where my dad is a scientist, and I have seen in their own institute cloning of the the buffaloes and the cows. So there are a lot of ethical practices. You have to cross that bridge to do it. Yes, you can slip the radar and do things, but eventually you get caught. Like He Jun was the name of the scientist who had done it in China. So you will get caught. So I somehow we have ruled, and we will be able to rule whatever it comes at the end of the day. So human will get sense of things. I am not comfortable with the AI, ChatGPT and all taking over, but ethical part of the genetic modification or the legal part of it, I think India, Singapore, UK, US all have tight laws to not kind of, sway away from it.
Great. I think that's quite optimistic
Yeah,
idea
it is
about
comforting, but you cannot go large scale on it. Yes, they might be doing it in their backyard, but it won't translate into something that can be drastically different for us.
Right. So as you mentioned, your father is a scientist, and in this, I hear you also, Bhaika's father is a scientist. So how much are your books reflective of your life, both the books, if you talk about, or let's say events in your life?
So Abhishek, what happens is that I read it somewhere that your first few stories take a lot from the author's life.
Yeah.
So I am not any different. So with that night, probably there is a comment from my commissioning editor. She finished reading I Hear You, which was my second book that went to her. And she's like, this is the real you. I mean, I can see parts of you in the book. And I did not deny it, because the faith Mahika had in Shiv is the faith that I draw all the strength from my Shiva. The relationship she had with her father is what I have with my father. In fact, there is a funny story that I finished the first draft of this book. It had a lot of Mahika and father's communications and all that, and I had to cut it down to make it thriller. So my father read the book, and in that Mahika sees that the father dies and she becomes an orphan, and he finishes that page and he puts the book down and he says, "You killed me." And I'm like, I did not kill you. You are not the father there, because my husband is not the genetist here. So don't compare that it is my life. But the story had that a sense, or the love for my father was there, and the father's love was there. Similarly, in that night, I'm very truly honest about you. The whole friendship essence is directly lifted from my own personal life.
Oh.
The experiences of playing Ouija is lifted from there. 20 years, we are still best friends. Nothing has come between us. So there are parts which are real, then there is heightened reality, which is definitely not there, whether it is abusive husband or OCD husband. Those things are not there, but the basic essence of human being you have to draw from somewhere. And I think for the first 2-3 books, it's always that the author gets it from their own life.
Absolutely. So did you play this Ouija? I think it's pronounced as Ouija, if I'm not wrong.
Ouija, yeah.
So you used to play this in your hostel?
Yeah.
So
calling of spirits, not the prank.
Yeah. Did it ever scare you, or you just
No,
enjoyed?
I don't believe in ghosts,
Okay.
and I don't believe in Ouija, so it never scared me. I always thought the coin was moved by everybody else. Then the ghost itself.
All right. Okay, so coming to your books. So as I can see, not only you have original ideas, but you are able to, you can say, blend many genres or topics in one. Whether it's science, it's thrill, it's suspense. Again, how you manage to pull it up, bringing so many perspectives, things in one book.
So a lot depends on the research you are doing. So what actually a story is all about: characters, situations they are in, and the locations and settings. So my most of the time goes in the research of the entire thing. I predominantly focus on the issues that we are going to handle. For example, genetic modification. Then I'll take a lot of time to understand how much research has been done, because what we are giving a story to our intelligent readers. We cannot actually, just create something out of nothing. You have to give some basis. There is CRISPR technology, which is actually inching towards knowing the whole human genome. Now, as a STEM professional, I had no clue what all this biogenetics is all about. So I had to read entirely. Now, when you start reading, you start evolving as a writer,
Right.
because you come to know the finer details of that particular profession, whether it is ethical hacking. Because what you're doing is you have real life characters. You're putting in, extreme situations, like how much hacking can be done. Now, as a layman, I have been out of touch with all the hacking, techniques and all. So I had to go back and read all of it to understand that how far can I take my ethical, my ethical hacker, and which is Catherine, and my, the blackmailer, how far I can take them. So that's how kind of things start evolving when you're researching the meaty part of the story. Then comes the location and setting. I prefer not to research, because what you can feel there when you go to a location is not what you learn from the internet or the YouTube. So locations, I've been still in my comfort zone of writing in Singapore or Kurukshetra or Lucknow, which the places I have been to, the air I can feel, the vibes I can feel. The last or the only part that I have experimented in the third book, which is I'm writing currently, is writing away from my own comfort zone. I wrote about engineers. I fairly know how they work. I wrote about scientists. I fairly know how a prototype works, how it reaches a clinical trial stage. So it was a familiar zone as a human being. For my upcoming book, I have some crime procedures involved, and police procedures involved. So I'm talking to a lot of IPS officers, a lot of constables and inspectors, and a lot of people, because that is something which they will tell me what kind of difficult situations they go through every day in their job, how a particular crime is committed, how they take, solve the mystery around it. So those are the things I cannot get over the internet. Those are the things only you get when you talk to them, and they give you ideas when you talk to them. They will say that if you want a conflict, make one IPS officer and make one, rising through the station officer or the inspector's ranks. So that makes the story interesting, because I would not know what kind of conflict happens when you come as an IPS officer and start ruling someone. So those are the finer details you get to know only as part of the research, and then it it evolves into a different story when you have put so much research into something.
No, absolutely. Okay, before the next question, there was a question from IMVNM. I think it was about whether there will be a question and answer. So yes, we will have a audience question and answer, and you will be writing your question in the comment box. But that's when I'm done with the, my questions with Nidhi, and you will have a couple of minutes to put up questions, and Nidhi will answer those. So Nidhi, as we talk about this, the upcoming book, so is this something related to the police force, some crime fiction kind of thing?
Yes, it's a crime fiction. Yeah, that's all I can tell you, that it's a crime fiction. But it has again, it's a hybrid genre. There is another element involved, like That Night had a horror to it, which I am not in a position to reveal right now. So it's coming out with Penguin.
Great. And I know it may be a little early, but can we expect it this year itself or the next year?
No, definitely not this year.
Not this year.
Probably next year, yeah.
It
takes 8 to 9 months for a book from reaching from my end to to you guys. So when I finish a final draft, it teaches like 8 to 9 months precisely to see the day of the light there.
Great. And both your books were published with Penguin. So wanted to ask, as a first-time author with no pedigree as such, no published work, did you face any challenges in getting published with publisher like Penguin? How did it?
I can have a separate session on how many challenges I faced. But cutting the story short, I think I wrote it. I Hear You had a potential. It had a new storyline. It got picked up very quickly by one of the very, good literary agents in India. And the contract was signed very quickly. I'm talking about 2015-16. And then there was this radio silence. Nothing, no positive, no negative. And she totally believed in, that kind of story. And she was like, I really believe in this story, but somehow the timing wasn't right, or it was destined to happen this way. I kept on waiting, and how, Abhishek, authors are, they feel so keenly about everything. That's why they put it in words, their emotions. I would feel so keenly. I asked, she's not going to reply, and I would feel frustrated. So I decided to distract all my negative energy into writing that night. I wrote that night, and I kind of pushed 5-7 pages to her, saying that probably you would like to read this. And she read it, and all due respect, she had read I Hear You, a unique story. And then there was that night, which is typically a run-of-the-mill story for the first 10 pages. So she's like, it's okay, you can probably try this independently. And she kind of gave me that sign that she doesn't believe in the story as much as she used to believe in I Hear You. So I was like, okay, fine, let me try it. So I just went out and submitted through a few contacts this book that night to Penguin only. And they picked it up in like 4 to 5 days. Gurveen, my commissioning editor, she looked at the story and she was like, I'm taking it, and as quickly as possible. And this was the peak of COVID. So I was like, nothing was moving. And I had just lost my Mama Ji, who was the inspiration for me to write. And I was like, that dream of him seeing me published has been lost. So whatever I get is whatever I have. I took it, and I had amazing team at Penguin. They have been amazing support through and through during that night. And then I somehow managed to get the I Hear You out of the agent's hand, and she was happy to let go. And then I Hear You went to Penguin. That's how we reached there. But I think it was meant to happen that way, that, that night comes first and I Hear You comes second. So sometimes you can't fight destinies, how I look at it.
Of course. Yeah, I remember that night came out just before COVID. I think that was... I bought your book that night from Bharisans, and just before I got stuck with COVID.
Okay. Yeah. So it was the second wave of COVID that had hit, and it was the toughest time to launch. Yeah. To launch your own book, sitting in Singapore and being a debut author. But Penguin made it possible.
So, other than The Great Lord, I also remember your book, because that's the one I picked just before I was diagnosed with COVID. And remember one of my friends called me that day and asked that how is it in Delhi, everywhere situation is bad. Aap sab to theek ho na? He just asked. I was like, yeah, hopefully, we are all fine. And from that evening itself, things went haywire.
Things went, So interestingly, the book was planned around 15th of April. The launch date was 15th or 13th of April. And then because of COVID signs, the Penguin sales had decided to move it to 5th April so that at least few books were pushed out. So they strategically kind of changed the publishing date at that point of time. Yeah.
So, okay, one more question about your books. So your books, I have noticed, as you talked about various topics and all, it has also dealt with many of, you can say, the social issues about our society. For example, in I Hear You, it's many times, husbands expecting that kind of perfection from their wives. In many cases, it happens the other way around as well. The wife's expectation is based around how she looks at things, and
Totally.
they expect the same from their spouse. In that night, we dealt about the stigma being faced by the LGBT community. You touched upon that topic. So, do you see that is intentional of having these topics so that people have a discussion around these so-called social issues, or how?
So I don't plan my stories, Abhishek, as I said. So I'm not writing for pleasing anyone, is how I look at the story. It kind of tells the story, but I am an ally when it comes to LGBTQIA plus genre, or any kind of thing which is for women. So I basically write women fiction. I write about empowering women. So the issues are in every house. People came back and told me that, Mahika is not real. How can somebody be an idiot at that level, that she doesn't know about her finances, she doesn't know where her things are? But that is how it works in the Indian community.
Yeah.
At least that used to work in 2001, 2002. You come with your husband here. You have no clue about the new place. Yes, you start working. I know working women who have zero idea of their finances, what they're earning. So that is the real story. That is the real thing that is happening.
Right.
So if you don't bring it out, it comes out on its own, because you've seen so many people suffering. So nothing out of this was intentional that, LGBT allies in trend, so I should write that. No, it was what happened in my hostel. Whatever I saw, whatever I absorbed at that point of time, subconsciously resurfaced in the story. I don't write to please, I write to please myself, is what actually happens. But I do invest a lot of research when I'm talking about females who again and again get abused by the same thing and by the same person. Why that happens, what is the psychology, I would read. That is the only part that happens consciously in that when I kind of put her in a situation, there has to be an extreme situation. So I would read about it, why someone would get through that kind of a problem, why they are facing that. And that is why it looks like it is structured or planned.
Yeah.
But planning only happens after the story has been written and I'm doing a research in the second round.
Of course. You mentioned one very important thing, and I would take it as a suggestion for all the authors, that you don't try to please others, you to please yourself. So
yeah, I mean, if you're writing a formula book or a formula writing, then you cannot be creative enough to cross a genre and write.
No, that's very much. One of your books, That Night, is recently published in Hindi as well. So
Yes.
wanted to ask, how do you see, because largely we are now in India, we are reading English, not much of Hindi or even regional languages, whether in South, whether in North, West, anywhere. Do you see any future for our languages, or you think it's all English? The future is that only?
No, I think it's a mixed bag. I have seen Hindi books doing very well. For example, Sured Mohan Pathak book has been ruling the Amazon charts right now. There are books that have been doing well. Hidden Hindus, Hindi translation is the top selling book. So we have a lot of readers who like to read in Hindi. There is a generation which we are talking about, like my parents, my in-laws, friends, all have picked That Night in Hindi. They were waiting for it to come in Hindi. So we have that generation, and then there are people who are from my generation who equally love the Hindi literature as much as they love the English literature. So there is a lot of Hindi and Marathi, because I got an offer in Marathi as well for That Night. So it is going to be published soon there. Gujarati, there are a lot of different literature, just that it is not as popular or as read, but in small pockets you can see regional books also picking up very well.
And interestingly, we are not having that much original Hindi literature now, not that much. There are few authors, as you mentioned about Pathak. He's a kind of exception. I guess he's the only one who writes in Hindi and has the huge following.
Pankaj Dubey also writes in Hindi.
Pankaj Dubey, Manav is there, but as I said, the scope and many things. If you see, typically the price of a Hindi book, a novel, is typically lower. If an English book sells for 500, get a new novel, the Hindi price would be, you can say, almost kind of half of it.
Right.
It happens in. So yeah, original writers are definitely less in numbers. So translation, I believe is a hope that the tradition of reading in our languages is still alive, and let's hope that we have not only have people who are reading, but who are writing in Hindi and our own Indian languages, as
Right.
there are many. Yeah. All right. So, all right. I think this is it from Aaron. Yeah. One question before you open it for the audience. What suggestion would you like to give to aspiring writers?
So if you heard the story I told you in terms of not giving up, I would suggest that don't give up on your work in terms of not only submitting it time and again, but also revising it. So just to tell you a short story on that, I was done with that night. It became a bestseller. I Hear You was ready with my agent, and she totally believed in the story. I could have just kind of passed it to my commissioning editor, but by then I had gone through so many writing processes and editing processes with the entire team, from developmental edit to line edit to copy edit, that I decided I will rewrite I Hear You based upon the feedbacks I got from the readers and from the editor and the copy editor, and I rewrote it again. So as many times as you submit and as many times as you get the rejection, rather than just pointing the finger on the person who rejected you, you should look back and see your own manuscript. There must be a flaw why they think it will not fly, and that is where you start editing. So if you ask me, that night went from being based in London to being based in India, and then coming back to London and then coming back to India. There were 5-6 drafts of that night. And same with I Hear You. I can't even count how many drafts I have written, how many my family has already read, different versions of I Hear You. So not giving up essentially doesn't mean that you push the same manuscript again and again. It means you edit, re-edit, and then submit. And that's how you get that finished product. And that's how it actually gets believed by everyone.
Great. And yeah, one thing which I mentioned, I'll keep it for the end. So your husband is disillusioned that your writing career is a retirement, is his retirement plan. So is that true, or it's really an illusion?
Totally, he is disillusioned. He thinks that he will sit back and I'll sell like Chetan Bhagat, and there will be multiple books, and he keeps on, every book I pass it to him, he starts imagining the cast. He's a movie guy. He will start imagining the cast, and he gives a lot of constructive feedbacks when he's reading. He's the biggest critique I have at home, and he would be like, this is not working. Imagine this scene as in the movie. And I'm like, I don't like movies, I like books. And we just sit and come to a conclusion somewhere where we change the ending so that it becomes like that. And every book has his imaginary cast there. So he's completely living a different dream there. So I don't know who will reach where, but I'm happy with whatever I'm getting right now.
Great. So for ending, your wall is very tempting, and which is tempting me to ask whose idea is this. This is a great idea of decorating walls. It's your idea of putting.
Yes, it's painted by me as well. I painted the wall.
Oh, nice.
So yeah. So when the creative side becomes your profession, you find another creative side as your passion. So this is what I've been doing.
This looks really cool.
I think one of the viewers, Souvik, asked a question that, did you write the chapters of I Hear You all again? Yes, I did. I wrote the entire thing again because my commissioning editor wanted a domestic thriller. And at that point of time, when I had written I Hear You, it was more inclined towards the science fiction, which she thought won't fly in India. So I changed it to domestic thriller angle to it. So yes, I rewrote the entire chapters line by line again.
Wonderful. That really requires a lot of effort.
Yes, it is.
Not everyone can do this, I must say. I mean, when you write something.
Yeah, if you quit your job, it should be worth it.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. So I think I end it here. We have now opened it for the audience. And yeah, so one question already answers. All those who want to ask any questions to Nidhi, they can write it in the comment box. Let me check. I think there are some questions before. Okay, so this is from Souvik Nandi. We badly need that session. I think this is about, getting to the publisher and getting a book published. I completely agree. There are not many people who would require such a session. And you've written both.
When am I coming to India? Next week.
Oh yes, you are coming to India. So are you really planning to have such session about publishing? I guess there'll be many takers for that.
Yes, we have a few writing workshops planned, and
Okay, great.
they will be shared soon because my publicist is planning things around it, and we will be sharing the commercials soon.
Okay, guys. So all those who are interested, I'm sure you'll be following Nidhi on her social media, and I'm sure there will be more updates in that regard.
No, this is a question there. Do you look up making a movie on the books? No, I am a complete reader. I would love to have book as a bestseller. I don't look at movies. Yeah, but I leave that chore on my husband to dream about it.
But I must say both your books are the perfect material for, movies, I would say. Both the books.
Fingers crossed, like Sovic. Let's see. Because that is the only way to make money in writing, to be honest with you. That's the only way I can survive in the field of writing if I don't want to go back to work.
Where I want to get both the books signed. So yeah, can you disclose your schedule?
So I am coming to Delhi, Mumbai, Chandigarh. That's all I have targeted for this visit.
All right. Okay, ma'am, what do you think are some mistakes young writers make in their work?
Being impatient to submit the work is what I think I did in terms of not preparing. And the second is that knowing the craft well in terms of creating the characters that are close to real life, but writing the dialogues, because through character only you are going to tell the entire story. So that is the mistake I feel personally we are not trained to do, and that needs a lot of reading from various books. And if you guys want to know, I think I have a link I will reshare in my stories about what books you should read if you want to write, and they give you enough depth of the craft in terms of how to create a character and what should be the flaws and what should be the things, and how to look for what your developmental edits are not working and why they are not working. Yes, I'm coming to Mumbai.
Yeah, and okay, being an independent filmmaker, I really wish to create a thrilling web series on that type. Fingers crossed. Awesome. You're already getting offers. Don't forget my commission because we are having this interview.
Yes, definitely. Ever thought of writing the screenplay of your own book? Souvik, I haven't thought of it, but we can try. I have written a screenplay for a story in Singapore. It's called Dastak. There is a 10 minutes play of 10 plays of 10 minutes. And I had written Shanknath, and interestingly, we had written together, me and my husband, in Bridge, which is my mother tongue precisely. I'm from Mathura. Okay. So I wrote it in Bridge. Yes, so that's the only screenplay I have written.
That's amazing. Okay. So guys, any other questions for Nidhi? Or there are a lot of appreciative posts. I think people liked that night a lot. There are a lot of to that. For I Hear You as well, I think there's some people yet to read I Hear You.
Yeah, it's quite new. It's just 2 months. We just completed 2 months.
Exactly. Cool. I think no more questions. So great. I think we can then call it a day. So guys, thank you very much for joining this session.
Thank you for joining.
And Nidhi, thanks a lot for sparing time for this session, and wish you all the best for your future books.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Abhishek, I just wanted to apologize that you asked me for a live session during that night. And thank you for your patience that you waited till I Hear You came. I really appreciate that. Absolutely. Really, really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And I hope when you come to Delhi, we'll definitely meet for the book signing.
Yes, most definitely. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much, Nidhi.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining.